Good evening, everyone. Good to see you out. I'm pleasantly surprised. Okay, I'm assuming.
Push the button down on top to turn green, and you're good to go.
Okay. I think we're good to go. Good deal. I meant to bring my portable mouse clicker and didn't. Sent Linda back home to get it, and I think she's just going to stay home, it looks like. I want to begin by thanking everyone that is here at Barrickville for being a part of the team. Traveled to Kenya twice this year, 3 times last year. And I can't go and do anything without good folks like you. You have financially helped in a wonderful way. Your prayers, your words of encouragement, I'll see many of you out. I live closer to Barrickville than to do Mannington, so and grew up, kids went to school here, so I have known you longer than most of the folks in Mannington. So I deeply appreciate your words of encouragement, your prayers, and are we up here? Okay, good. Every time I take a trip to Kenya, I think, well, this is the best one. Finally, I sort of assessed this trip, and I thought, they're all good. They're just different. They're unique. This trip that we took in August of this year was very unique in that we had a team of 8. 5 had never been to Kenya before. 1 had never been on an airplane before. And her comments were, go big or go home. Well, she went big. I'm going to talk about the work that I do in 4 different areas. And I shared some of these areas of work with you the last time I was here. And the only thing that changes is each area, the work just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. We work with strengthening existing congregations and planting new congregations. That's biblical. Paul did that, 1st, 2nd, 3rd missionary journeys. We believe that's a biblical pattern. The Kenya Christian Youth Camp. We had a phenomenal turnout this year. We'll talk about that. The Ahono Tumaini School. We started out with a preschool in 2011, May of 2011. We had 20 students. One of our coal miner buddies up at Mannington donated the money to buy the plastic tables, plastic chairs. We now have over 400 students up through 6th grade. Lord willing, we will add 7th grade in January. Tell you about that. And then the Kenya School of Preaching. We graduated our 2nd class. It is one of the 21 Bear Valley extensions worldwide. I'm the coordinator of that school. We expect our 3rd class to begin October 3rd. We have 20 students that have already been selected for the program, 5 on sort of a waiting list, and we had well over 53 applicants. I don't know how many we actually had total. Our team. Here we are in front of the Kenya Bible Society of Kenya, where we buy our Bibles. Left to right, you know the big ugly lug on your far left, Peter Ray Cole, Heather Yoho, Doug Klaus, Jeff Thompson, Linda, me, Keith Cole in the red shirt, and then Clint Perkins from the Dewey Avenue congregation in St. Mary's. Wonderful team. We met this past Friday up at Cheddar's by Cabela's and sort of had an assessment of the trip, and everyone hopes to go back. There's going to be 2 that are not going to be able to go back next year, possibly, but really had a good team, and we all contributed. Continent of Africa, you see where Kenya is, bordered by the Indian Ocean on the east, Somalia on the northeast, and you have Uganda on the west, Tanzania on the south. East Africa is in a drought. They knew it was coming. They've known for 5 or 6 years that they were going to have a drought. But because of lack of leadership and corruption in the leadership that does exist, many of these countries are not prepared. So, up across northeastern Uganda and on over into Somalia and northern Kenya and clear on down into Zambia and Zimbabwe. There are people that are literally starving. And we are working. I sent some money over before my trip to one of our graduate students in northeastern Uganda, Christopher Auma. And when I found out how he was doing, he said, "Mike, we are sleeping hungry," were his exact words, which means all they had the energy to do was just sleep. Well, we sent money for them to buy corn. They could still buy some food, and they're getting the drip irrigation going, and they're doing quite well now. We hit the ground running. We got into Kisumu, Kenya on Saturday late morning, had to rent 2 vans to get everyone and their luggage transported to the motel where we stay. And then Sunday morning, we separated out, and Linda, my wife, and Heather Yoho and I went to Luanda. Luanda is a wonderful story. Mom, you've been to Luanda. My mother and father are here from Parkersburg tonight. You'll have to ask them why they drove all the way from Parkersburg on a beautiful Sunday evening, but they'll explain that to you. But Mom was with me in 2008 where we were in Tanzania and got on an Akamba bus. We were supposed to get on the bus at 3 to 3:30. We were at the bus station 1 to 1:30 to make sure we got a seat. At 6 o'clock, the bus finally showed up. We rode the bus to Nairobi all night, switched buses at Nairobi, went on to Kisumu, got into Kisumu, Kenya at 9 o'clock. I forget even what day it was. The Bible seminar started at 10. Taught all that day, made the mistake of buying lanterns, which means you don't have to go home at dark now. We finally, about 7:30, I finally said, I got to go. Went back to the motel. During this 3-day seminar, Mom did a little medical mission, and I taught in the Bible seminar and organized that. We had 5 or 6 baptisms that I remember in one day, and one of those men was Tom Alusala. Tom, after that, converted his wife, went to Arusha, Tanzania to study at the Andrew Conley School of Preaching, came back, planted the church in Luanda, supports himself by selling milk. On Sunday morning at Luanda, we had 135 or 136 present. Linda and Heather had never taught in Africa, didn't know what to expect. They said, "How many children should we expect?" I said, 30 to 40. They didn't believe me. They took material for 25. They had 80 kids in a 10 by 24 room. Congregation, self-supporting basically. Now, what we did do, while it's on my mind, go ahead and tell you with Luanda, they've also started a preschool. They have 53 in their preschool. One of the problems that they have is if you build a semi-permanent building, we were able to purchase land for them last year, build a building for them. It's sort of like a pole building with corrugated metal, but it functions very well. The only problem is you have a dirt floor. Dirt floor, you have, they call them jiggers. They're actually sub-Sahara African sand flea that infest the foot, digs up underneath the toenails. I'll show you some pictures here in a little while. And it's really a serious problem until you get a concrete floor. We left money at Luanda for them to pour the concrete floor, to build a little temporary kitchen for the preschool, and to buy a water tank. And they're good to go. This is Linda and Heather teaching the class. You see how many kids are stuffed in this room. Their lesson that morning was Samuel listens to God, the story of Samuel and Eli. And during the course of teaching the story, they asked for volunteers. for interaction with the kids, and they had kids who were volunteering to be Eli, and some were Samuel. And by the way, these toboggans are knitted by a lady, or crocheted by a lady out at Washington Street. And you say, toboggans in Africa? Believe it or not, we were there in the winter time. Our August, since they're south of the equator, their seasons are exactly opposite ours. So if it's winter or summer here, it's winter there. So when I take my trip in February and March, I'm in mid-90s up close to 100 because it's their summer. Well, it's their winter in our August, and those kids are literally freezing to death. They had sweaters, they had coats, and they were tickled to death to get these toboggans. Kids eating their lunch after services in the shade of the building. Man on the left is Tom Alusala. He was converted during that 2008 Bible seminar. The man on the right is Ernest Mwanzo. Ernest was one of our graduates in the Alpha class, the first class of Kenya School of Preaching, also from Luanda. Goes back and is working with Tom and some other congregations, supporting himself. These guys look at us as sort of the heroes when it comes to Christianity, and I look at them as the heroes. They're phenomenal in the work that they do. We also went to Ibuyongo. I call it the Rock Church. You can see why. Wouldn't you have loved to have been there when all of this was happening, all this was created? Mark, can you imagine? There's just rocks like this all over this area. We're probably 15 miles from Uganda right here. See how big that rock is. Here's the congregation or the church building at Ibuyongo and their evangelist, Obadiah Amyatela. I've known Obadiah now several years. Had him as a student. He's also one of our adjunct instructors at the Kenya School of Preaching. True evangelist in every sense of the word. Supports himself by peasant farming. He has a bicycle, and he will haul people on market day 10 cents a trip to and from the market. I said, how much do you usually make in a day? He said, about 100 Kenya shillings, 10 trips. That's a lot of work for $1. The state has taken, you can see the road to the right, and then the state, the government, has taken their land to the right, and soon they're going to expand the road and just take the building. I said, okay, how much did the government give you for your land and for your building? Nothing. They just took it. So these folks, although they own their land, they own their building, they're going to be without a church building. So we were able to purchase land for them. This is one of the places that when I first visited there some 7-8 years ago, I noticed these bricks stacked up in the corner. When a brick cost about a nickel US to have fired, and when people get a little bit of money ahead and they can buy bricks, they donate the bricks, and I think I maybe have shown you that picture before, but they are stacking up bricks to build a church building and add on the church building. I'll show you the land here in just a little while. We sent Peter Ray and Clint out to Ibuyongo, then we joined them afterwards. Peter Ray preaching, and this is Charles Agutu, our director at the Kenya School of Preaching, translating. Notice the hand motions. The sign of an excellent translator is they not only do as much as possible a word-for-word translation and get all the local colloquialisms and idiomatic expressions, but they also do the hand motions. Charles is excellent and does an excellent job as the director of the Kenya School of Preaching. This is Clint on your right, Peter Ray on the left. We distribute as many of these West Virginia hats as we possibly can. We take a suitcase full of them. And one of the reasons I do that is one of my buddies that travels with me sometimes he's gone twice, but here lately he's only been going once a year, is an elder at the Northwest congregation in Canton, Ohio. Guess who his football team is? The Buckeyes, the worthless nuts. We also have the Charlotte Avenue congregation in Rock Hill. Shirley, your sister, is a member of the Rock Hill congregation. Wonderful, top-notch congregation. Clint is familiar with that good congregation and David Farr and that eldership. But the man who cannot pronounce his name properly, Mike Rowan, okay, spelled the same way as Clint, but they pronounce the last name differently, is an alum of the University of Florida. And we have a hanging banner at the Kenya School of Preaching, a flying WV. And the first thing he noticed when he walked through those doors was that flying WV. We get as many of these hats and stuff as we can over there. This is the Ibuyungu congregation. I think I have a picture of the land coming up. We were able to purchase this land. Deed, title, free and clear. And they're in the process now of doing all they can to raise the funds to build their building. It's going to cost more than they can handle. So rather than us just come in and say, we'll build your building for you, we're going to let them struggle as much as they possibly can and then make a deal with them. Maybe if they can get the walls up, then we'll put the roof on and the doors and the windows, something like that. An iron sheet cost roughly $7 US. Okay? So you figure up the iron sheets. I think the iron sheets we built the building at Luanda for about $2,000. Here we are, meeting and greeting at Ibuyungu. Nyamasari, neat story at Nyamasari. John Aluch and his wife Asnet. John was the van driver for a team from Martinsburg led by Brandon Kearns back in 2012, 2013. And I've worked with his team some in Nyamasari, preached here quite a bit. But John, van driver, and he drove for the whole time that Brandon and his team was there in 2012. 2013, they hired John to drive the van again. John says, okay, but you need to come to my village first. Brandon says, the schedule's already set. He said, no, you have to come to my village first. Comes to his village on Monday morning. John, at his own expense, has a canopy set up, has food prepared, has 30 people there to hear the gospel. By the end of the week, there's a congregation of 16 people at Nyamasari. They met in John's father's house for a while until family members just threw a fit, said, get out, don't want you. So John donated the land for this building. I was speaking at Bridgeport a couple of years ago in November, and a group from Oakhurst was there. Their elders were there. Saw Dick Stanley a week or so later. He goes, oh, by the way, I've got a check for you. I said, for what? He said, we want to build that building in Nyamasari. Oakhurst built the building. Gave us $1,500, $1,600. Built the nice building. We supply the chairs, Bibles, etc. Congregation is doing very, very well. Power of the gospel. Lady on the right is the mother-in-law of one of the elders at Ahono. Ahono is one of the main areas where I work. It's just sort of the hub of the activity there. We built a nice church building there. They have a good eldership. We have the Tumaini school there, and we conduct the youth camp there. This is Rose Wasonga and Linda Reese. David and Rose Wasonga, wonderful, wonderful couple. Rose is actually going to school of a night and working on her early childhood development degree. She works every day in the Ahono Tumaini school. David is our director of the school. He's the evangelist at Ahono. I first met David in 2005 on a campaign in Arusha, Tanzania. Had him in class, a couple of graduate classes at the Andrew Conley School of Preaching in 2006. After class, I'd have all the students write up their little autobiography about a page, and I'd read it of a night and get to know the students that way. Called David into my room and to get to know him a little better. He introduced himself. He said, I'm David Wasonga. I'm married to Rose Wasonga, and I have two little preacher boys, Reagan and Ryan. Well, now he has another little preacher boy, Prince, and a little girl. And her name is Linda Reese Wasonga, named in honor of Linda. I'm going to show you her picture here in just a minute. This is Heather holding another one of our evangelists. Yeah, we'll show you. It'll come later. Tilapia, chicken. One thing you don't mention, you don't even acknowledge that there's head and feet and beaks and everything in the pot of chicken, because here's the delicacy, pecking order, okay? Head, especially the beak, and then the feet. And if you talk too much during your meal, you'll end up with one of those. I'm very happy with a leg. Very happy with a leg. Here we are at the equator. Cross the equator several times each day. Sunday afternoon, the Kenya Christian Youth Camp began. This was our 6th camp. And it's just about like any camp. For the first few hours, it's just a lot of chaos. We did something different this year. In addition to the camp, we also had the men's leadership class, which we've done that almost every year, but we also had the ladies' seminar, God's Woman, where Linda and Heather taught that on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday of camp. Did a phenomenal job. We conduct camp just anywhere we can have a class. Kids take the chairs out. This is Cheryl Agutu, Charles's daughter. This girl's 16 years old, just turned 16, teaching a young ladies class, doing a phenomenal job with that. Clint Perkins teaching the high school boys. This is Jacob, a 2014 graduate of the Kenya School of Preaching. Good student. Found out that right after he graduated, his house burned. He lost everything, including his study Bible with all of his notes in it. We have a couple in Mannington that has donated money to replace that Bible, so hopefully we can get that done real soon. Phanisa Lucilla teaching the teen girls. This is Tom's good wife. By the way, tell you a little sidebar story. You still have dowries to pay in Kenya. Guys, you get married, and 3 to 10 cows, cash, to be determined by your father-in-law. Tom, after he's converted and his wife's converted, they don't want anything to, his family, her family doesn't want anything to do with Christianity. They came and kidnapped her and the kids, took her back home. Tom had not finished paying his dowry. He didn't get her back until he paid the dowry. So guys, if you're thinking, we don't have that system here, so, you're stuck, okay? If you haven't paid your dowry, you're not going to be able to take your wife back. We had one of our students this year, and he really is going to marry a sweet girl, one of the elders' daughters at Ahono, Jen Tuju. And I said, "What's your dowry?" He goes, 3 cows. I said, "Jen's a 10-cow woman, buddy. What's wrong with you?" But he was trying to raise money for the dowry. Obadiah Amutela teaching the boys, and we provided notebooks with them. What we do for the material for camp is we're on about a 7-year rotation at All Age Week at West Virginia Christian Youth Camp, and I take that material and edit it, change some of the things in it to fit Africa, and I will email that material over to David Wasonga, who this year directed the camp, and he gets the material in the teacher's hands, and then they print the material, some of it, for the students. This is Linda teaching, and Carolyn Agutu, who is Charles' wife, the director of our school, translating. 3-4 years ago, you could not have gotten Carolyn in front of a group of people. But we have worked for really diligently the past 3-4 years in training women to teach women and train women to teach children, and it's working. Carolyn is a phenomenal teacher now. Really does a good job. Ladies' seminar, we had, what'd you have, Linda, about 25? Average 30, okay. 30 women. Here's levels of importance, people and animals in Kenya. Men, children, your farm animals, and women. For these ladies to have their own seminar was so special to them. Very, very special. Well, I won't even tell you some of the questions that were asked to Linda. Keith Call and I taught the men's seminar. This is James. James is working at the Buteri Church of Christ in the Buteri area, tremendous evangelist, one of our graduates of the first class of the Kenya School of Preaching. We found out recently that James, out of his own pocket, started a school to train men to better preach. Just sort of a leadership school out of his own pocket. Tom Alusla, athletic director. Tom used to be on the national soccer team for Kenya. And another Cal joined the ministry. If you have questions about that, you can see me afterwards. But this Cal was completely consumed in the ministry by Thursday at lunch. Lunch is quite good. The kitchen has really helped. The Gico cookers, I'll show you some of the pots that we use and the process behind that. They've cut down just tree after tree after tree, and that's what they use to cook, either wood or charcoal. So we have these special cookers at the school where they build a little heat chamber, fire bricks, that's very heat efficient. Fire bricks, stainless steel lining, fire bricks, stainless steel on the outside, and the pot fits down inside. It's vented out the back of the wall. So no longer do you have the smoke in the building. It's vented outside, but the process is just so much more efficient. All of our meals have been on time now, and by the way, we had 512 registered at camp. Don't know how many we actually had. A few more than that. This is one of our water tanks at the school. They enjoyed badminton in the afternoon for sports, jump rope, just all kinds of games. We separate the older kids and they walk about a mile, mile and a half to a local school, and we use their soccer field and volleyball court, and then the younger ones stay at our campus at the Hono Tumaini School. Or as they say in Kenya, they foot it to the field. Playing soccer, and kids are kids all over the world. Notice Heather, pink shirt, and the boy to our left, to her right. The boy's name is Aaron. We didn't know if he was a camper or what. We found out that he was not a camper. He was an orphan boy. His parents died when he was about a month and a half old. We got one of the local evangelists to check on him, and Heather befriended him, and George Ongondo went that evening, got the contact information for Aaron, and his aunt, he was living with his aunt and uncle, who had other children, who really couldn't afford Aaron. So we invited Aaron to come to camp. Aaron had head lice. He was eaten up with chiggers. It was just horrible. And we were able to feed him. We were able to get clothes for him. I'll show you his picture here in just a little while. We were able to clothe him. And throughout the course of camp and the week to follow, David Wasonga did follow-up work. I'll just cut to the chase. Monday of this past week, Aaron is now officially a student at the Ahono Tumaini School. He has a uniform, 2 uniforms, and 2 pairs of shoes. He's tested. He should have been in 5th grade, but we had to put him in 3rd grade because he just couldn't read, couldn't write. He does not have a learning disability. He's just behind. Imagine, and we have a family at Mannington that has sponsored him for the next year in school. It costs about $25 per person to keep a kid in school for 1 month at our school. $23 for the preschool kids. So they've written a check for the year, and we'll send that money over once every 2 months. Aaron has a chance now. By the way, see if I can get back. When's the last time you saw a building that full? Literally on Thursday night, when I was speaking the last night of camp, had I stepped this way 1 step, I would have stepped on kids. They were kids everywhere. You can see how close they were. Peter Ray came out a couple of nights. We had him speak. Great hit. He has a good rapport with the kids. Notice we have the one boy, and we bought chairs. I don't know how many chairs we bought. And every year we buy more chairs. And it's not that they break them. We just have more people show up. Notice the one boy sitting on the floor and the 2 boys sharing the chairs. This is one of our cookers. We can get enough beans or enough rice in this cooker to feed 800 people. Tuesday, they start washing their clothes. They'll wash them Tuesday and usually Thursday before they go back home. If a kid has 2 pairs of clothes, they're very lucky. Just some of the sports activities. Here we are buying Bibles at the Kenya Bible Society. Rule of thumb, a Bible costs $10, 10 US dollars. We can get any of the local languages, usually. We had trouble getting the Luo Bibles this trip. And then the English Bible, that is the Bible of choice that I like, is the English Standard Version. We actually got it, a nice little copy, for about the equivalent of $7.55. We bought 385 Bibles and distributed them this year. Here we are at the equator. Had to get, Clint had something he wanted to do with the banner that commemorating the 125th anniversary of the Mountaineers, and so he got this on a website somewhere. This is Aaron and Heather. Here is Aaron the next day with his aunt. They came. We were able to feed Aaron. We were able to get deloused and some new clothes here. And here he is getting his beans and rice. A little bit about the jiggers. Tunga penetrans, little sand flea, and they burrow up into the skin, as you can see, cause all kinds of infections, gangrene, different problems. Here's a picture of the bottom of a person's foot that is infected by these. Now, I wish we could have discreetly taken a picture of Aaron's feet so you could have seen his. Literally, the sand fleas had started to eat his toes away, especially his little toes. So what we did, we went in and sprayed his home and debugged his house, shaved his head, got him deloused, the fleas taken care of, new clothes, and like I said, now he's enrolled in our school. This is just Heather being Heather. Sitting around at lunch, just enjoying the company. Can't really see this on the picture, but we had our water bottles, and these kids would take the water bottles and use them in the afternoon. This kid has turned this bottle into a squirt gun, poked a hole in it, and going around squirting people. Sorting out beans for dinner. David with our soccer balls, my son-in-law, soccer coach down in West Tennessee was able to donate these balls. We were able to take over 4 laptops that were donated and distribute. David and our director at the school and the dean of men got one. One of the first buildings we built when we started camp was shower and toilet. Western style flush toilet. Go back 6 months later, everything's broken. Doesn't work. So, we got a problem. We have all these kids, and we have to have toilet facilities. Finally, figured out they want the old-fashioned latrines that they can maintain, that they're used to. So, that's what we have built, and the government loves it, the kids love it, and everything is working well. And these don't break down. Here's a neat story. On Monday, Charles Agutu calls me and says, I'm on the way to camp. I said, why? He goes, got a man who wants to be baptized. Okay, great. Albert had studied, this man closest to us, had studied World Bible School for quite some time, and to reach the point he says, I believe that Jesus is a Christ. I have tremendous faith. I'm repentant of my sins, confess Christ, willing to do that. I've not been baptized. I need to be baptized. This man drove 3.5 miles. He owns an automobile. He's a businessman, studied on his own, drove 3.5 miles because he had emailed someone back in the United States, what should he do? And they said, go to Kisumu, Kenya, look up Charles Agutu at the Kenya School of Preaching. And he found him, and Charles brought him out, and he was baptized that afternoon, late morning, early afternoon. You don't know what's going to happen when you... Does this congregation work with World Bible School? Have you worked with World Bible School? Are you familiar with World Bible School? We have a lady at Mannington that quit counting at over 16,000 students that she had World Bible School, Virginia Bice. On our Monday night for the Master, part of our program is we grade and send out World Bible School Bible correspondence courses around the world. There have been millions of people who have studied the Bible this way, and now you can do it online. Albert, I think, did it online. But God rewarded his diligent search. Elias, there's no other way to put it, had been a drunk all of his life. We were able to purchase the land for our school off of Elias's mother and some off of Elias, and gave him lifetime rights to live in his little house. We pay him a few shillings to be our guard of the school. But Elias started showing up at services at Ahono 6-8 months ago. And I noticed right off when I saw Elias again on Sunday afternoon, he didn't smell of the cheap homemade beer that he usually did. He wasn't slurring his words. He had quit drinking. We studied with Elias, and Elias was baptized. Linda went up to him later on that day and said, hey, Elias, I understand that you were baptized. And he pointed his finger in the air and he said, yes, and now I'm going to heaven. This is Elias with his Bible. And by the way, when I studied with Elias, I had him read the Scriptures, and he could read. And he read them out loud. He said he had been studying his Bible for a long time, and he could find the books in the Bible. God blessed us with 29 baptisms at camp this year. Last year, on Thursday, David Wasanga's oldest son, Reagan, was baptized. And I asked him if he would read the Scripture out loud on Thursday night for my devotional that I had, and he gladly did. This is Ryan. Ryan Wasanga, David's second born. He's baptized at camp this year. Thursday night, I had him read the scripture also. 29 baptisms, as we have on the screen. To God be the glory. We were able to present Bibles to all of the new converts. We were able to give Bibles to one of the boys' oldest teenage class, and the ladies in the ladies' seminar got Bibles, and the men in the men's seminar that did not have their own copy of the Scriptures got their own Bible. Avocados were in season when we were there this year, and they were really good. It's a neat picture. These kids, I'm convinced, like camp here in the States, will make friends that will last a lifetime. It's really neat. Some of these kids have been showing up now all 6 years of camp. And that's really, really neat to see that. We got to go to David's house, David and Rose's house. Linda, when she was walking down the trail, she said it finally hit her. I'm in Africa. Just out walking through the village, and we're going to David's house. David welcoming us to his little village. If you pass someone and don't greet them, you are a rude person. So you have to stop and greet everyone. Here we are going by some old corn stalks, and we're looking up in the avocado tree. Here we are at David's house. Before I move on to the next slide, David told me that one morning recently, evening, he had put a little plastic wash basin right outside his door. He went out the next morning, lifted up the wash basin, and there was a full-grown green mamba underneath the wash basin. I said, David, those are poisonous. Those are called the two-step snake. You get bit and you take 2 steps and keel over dead. They're poisonous? And he's got a little 2-year-old running around. Inside of David and Rose's house, David's back in the corner. You can just hardly see him. This is little Linda Reese Wasonga. She had gotten into the stickers, and kids like stickers all over the world. Now, got to tell you a story. At first, Linda Reese Wasonga did not like the original Linda Reese, because Linda Reese Wasonga, the name had been stolen, and she did not like that. She has my name, and she was articulate enough to tell people she did not like the fact that Linda Reese had her name. Little did she know, maybe we can explain that someday. But they made up and got along just fine. Just as cute as she can be. And growing up with 3 older brothers in an East African country, she's going to be, as Jim Yost would say, she's going to be tougher than woodpecker lips. We hit it off real well from the start. David's buying some land. Tradition in Kenya is, if you are the firstborn, well, let me back up. You have a compound. Family has a compound. Dad builds the house, and then as each son is born, he builds a house for the son, or the son builds a house. Sons get to be adult, and when the compound gets crowded, Dad goes to the firstborn, to the oldest son, and says, it's time for you to go get your own compound now. Time for you to hit the bricks and move out. David's in that process now. He's the firstborn. He has other siblings, and he has to move. So he's in the process of buying this land, and he's wanting to build a house very soon, as soon as they get a clear title deed to the land. Walking back from David's house, here we have a view of the school and the church building on the far right, and wish I had my pointer up here. to the far left, we have the foundation already started, and we will build 4 consecutive classrooms joined on the same foundation. And then we will have a 2-story, maybe a 3-story building, depending on whether we decide to go to what would be the equivalent of our high school here in the United States. But that building should be completed, at least what we're going to do. We had to pour the foundation all at once, which was quite expensive, about $32,000. But we had to go down about 8 feet and tie in rebar and all kinds of things because of the potential for earthquakes. And we don't want a school collapse and kill a bunch of kids. So they actually have a building commission there that approved our plans, and we went through all of this. And we have the foundation, and I sent some more money over Friday, sent some more over Monday. But we're getting that foundation, and then we'll build that 1 classroom. And then next year we'll build another until we have once we get the first level done, then it gets much less expensive to build the classrooms on top of that. Linda and Heather and Clint had to go back home after about 10 days, but they did a phenomenal job. I don't know what's worse, telling your wife goodbye and not seeing her for 3 weeks, or having her there for 10 days and then putting her on an airplane and knowing you're not going to see her for another 8-10 days. This is a garbage dump right beside one of the places where we go to eat. Where we go to eat caters to Westerners. It's probably the Kenya equivalent of Walmart. And this garbage dump burns continually. If this isn't what Jesus had in mind when he talked about Gehenna, I don't know what is. Nadwara planted the church there a couple of years ago, 2 or 3 years ago. One Sunday I was preaching here with Denny Petrillo. That was in February of 2014. And we had 5 baptisms that Sunday morning. Reese was one of the baptisms. I'm going to remember that, tell you a story here in just a minute. Neat little fishing village. Notice the boy plowing, getting ready. Rainy season is in the process now. When I was there, they were just getting ready for the rains, getting ready to plant, so they're turning over the soil using oxen. Little donkey and a boy coming to fetch water out of Lake Victoria. I don't think when Jesus walked the shores of Galilee, the Sea of Galilee, the scenes could have been much different than this, other than the nets would have been probably hemp or something of an organic material instead of plastic. Had to have been just about like this. This is Reese. I guess it was February 2013. Reese was baptized that Sunday morning, had nothing to do with anything I said. That was because a seed had been planted. Reese was one of 5. He's still faithful. He has 2 nephews that went with me on, Hillary, the one on the right, went with me on the Bible study and helped translate some. And for a while I thought Hillary's a girl's name, but the guy that climbed Mount Everest, what was his name? Was it Hillary? And I can't figure out first and last name in Kenya, and they can't either. Here we are on our way to our Bible study. A man by the name of Peter that we were able to study with was baptized. If we get back to the building, Reese and Peter had been childhood friends. We're best of friends. Reese, as I left that evening, I wasn't able to go back to Nadwara because I had to teach a short course at the Kenya School of Preaching. Reese pulled me off to the side and he said, "Don't worry, I'll take care of Peter." That was just really, really a neat thought. This is where we introduced Peter to Peter. Church in Bondo we planted in the past year. I was able to preach there one Sunday. We were able to distribute Bibles. This is Jacob Amalo, who is trying to find a teaching job in the Bondo area so he can continue to work with the church. I had them hold up songbooks because every year that we had camp, we had to print songbooks, 200 or 300 songbooks. And I asked David, why do we need to keep printing these songbooks? Let's print them once and then save them. He goes, Mike, they take them home. And why do they take them home? Finally, I realized they don't have songbooks. This is the only songbooks Bondo has, and these are from the Kenya Christian Youth Camp in August of 2015, last year. I'm glad to print songbooks now. Here is the church meeting on Sunday morning. Several of these kids had been to camp that year, just a week before. We bought chairs for them. Wagusu planted the church in Wagusu. I think it was planted there 2011, 2012. I preached there soon after that. And now they have a nice new building, nice land, thanks to the Northwest congregation in Canton, Ohio. Had several baptisms in the campaign there this year. Again, another fishing village. Right after this baptism, do they call a group of hippos a pod? Is that what they call them? I think a pod. A whole group of hippos came from around the left. And I had wanted to see that, and I wasn't there to see it. But they had the baptism, and the locals are absolutely scared to death of the hippos. It's our team getting back from work out in the field. Kenya School of Preaching, we graduated 19. We're supposed to graduate 20. But we had one man who was a middle-aged man who knew better, who had been caught cheating 2 previous occasions, got caught the last regular class before the 2 short courses began. He got caught cheating on his Greek final, and he was dismissed immediately. When I got there, the director said, "Was that okay?" I said, "I support you 100%. Like 2 classes after 2 full years. But I told him, I said, if a man would cheat on his Greek final, he'd steal from the treasury. And I believe that. So they did the right thing. We graduated 19. Here's where the school meets. We rent this facility. We have 20 full-time students. We also have the graduate program. We have 6 to 8 at any given time. They have 9 desktop computers, 6 laptops. Each student is taught basic computer skills at the beginning of the program. So these new guys coming in October 3rd will be taught how to turn on the computer. Now you say, well, so what? Some of these guys are coming from villages where in their home they do not have electricity. Okay? They'll be taught how to turn on the computer, taught how to bring up Microsoft Word and all of the Microsoft Word, Excel, and PowerPoint. They'll be taught how to format their document, get it in 12-point font if that's what we require, inch margins, and save their document to a flash drive. That's a valuable skill to have when they graduate. So far, we've graduated 39. Is that right? You do the math. I'm tired. 13 the first class, 19 the second class. Okay? This is a neat picture because the men and the women to my left, to your right, Ahimadiwe Kamaro and his wife, and Charles Heberth and his wife. Charles and Ahimadiwe are co-directors at the Andrew Conley School of Preaching in Tanzania. They have I think they have 48 full-time students. So, school in Kenya is directed by a Kenyan. School in Tanzania, directed by local Tanzanians. We had a graduation, August 27th. We had over 300 guests. This is me, Charles Agutu, our director, and then Elias Amalo, our Dean of Men. Paul Carissa from Mombasa was our valedictorian. You know that man, Clint? Mike Rowan from Rock Hill congregation, Charlotte Avenue congregation down Rock Hill, was able to be there, be one of our speakers. Brandon Kearns. Neat thing this year, once again, Brandon Kearns, the very first year I conducted the all-age week of West Virginia Christian Youth Camp, Brandon Kearns and Peter Ray Cole were two campers. And to go over and work with them in this environment, camp and on this field, is really a neat thing to do. I have a little thing in my talk during graduation where I encourage them not just to eat the mango, but to plant the seed and to really produce for God. I want to share this with you, the work of this beta class while they were in school. They planted 5 churches, restored 6 churches to New Testament worship, 198 baptisms, and 33 restorations while they were full-time students at the Kenya School of Preaching. We were able to present them with bicycles. We purchased 29 bicycles thanks to the Atwood congregation down in West Tennessee. We have Americans who have taught in the program, but notice the number of local guys that we use as teachers in the program. All of these either have their master's degree or are working on their master's degree. '53 applied for the Gamma class, began October 3rd. Charlotte Avenue team. I wish I had time to tell you about each of these men, but these men are going back, planting churches or working with very young infant churches after graduation, and I'm convinced they're going to do a wonderful work. I do want to tell you about Joseph. I think it was 2013. I'm in Nyamasari doing a Bible seminar with the team from Martinsburg. I'm speaking. Joseph is walking on the road and hears me speak. He listens. He stands there and he listens. And he was so intrigued by what he heard that he looks up John, a Luch. John stays with him. Joseph becomes a Christian, is enrolled in the Kenya School of Preaching. He is a graduate of our beta class, second class, has already planted the church in Rombula and is there working now. This is all the teams combined. We got together. What do we accomplish? Just our team, 7 churches visited and strengthened, 512 registered at our camp, men's seminar, women's seminar, second graduation class of the Kenya School of Preaching, 29 bicycles purchased, 92 chairs purchased for 7 different congregations. There was a young man, one of our graduates, that had a tumor that was growing on the back of his neck. We provided funds for him to have that tumor removed. Numerous benevolent opportunities. I've already told you about the concrete floor for Luanda. I think a little while ago I said 385, it's 375 Bibles, and began the foundation for the school. Total, while we were there, 37 baptisms. You can't go to Kenya, but you can help. Thank you so very much for being a part of this work and being so very, very generous. My next scheduled trip, Lord willing, is February of next year. I'll go and teach a couple short courses, go out in the field, and work with the various congregations as we always do. Matthew 28. All authority has been given unto me in heaven and in earth, Jesus said. Go into all the world, make disciples of every nation, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And lo, I'll be with you always to the end of the age, or the end of the world. They're very receptive in this part of the world. It's a good work. I'm so humbled and blessed to be a part of it. And I'm so thankful that you are a part of the work also. You've heard the gospel. You need to respond. Become a Christian. Be restored. Or do we just need to stop and think, is there someone that needs the gospel close that I can share it with? People hungering and thirsty for the Word of God. We talk about how our country's going. I don't want to solve that. You do too. Gospel of Jesus. If you need to respond to the Lord's invitation, won't you do it right now? We stand and as we sing.